Hello, hello, here we are again, coming to you from Broadcast Team Alpha. You know, that's the show for the thinking American and the global citizen out there that is not afraid to step out of the box and start looking around to try to find out what else is there that I don't find on Channel 5. Well, there is a bunch, and we're going to talk about some of that here in the next hour. And yes, my name is Agi, and my co-host Nori, she is busy doing something different. She has a client, so she cannot be here with us, and we're gonna miss her. And we're gonna go do it anyway. So we are coming to you from about 40 some plus platforms all over the world, because we are also transmitting through the wonderful platform of the Cosmic Awakening Network. And because of them, we are on Roku, 3 TV stations, and a bunch of other places. And check out Cosmic Awakening Network, because they got, I think, 40 or 50 different shows on there that cover just about anything from one end of the spectrum to the other end of the spectrum of what you would like to know about. So check them out. Before I introduce the guest, I want to also tell you how you can connect with us. You can find us on broadcastteamalpha.com, and you can send us a message through there. There's a place for that. And if you are watching it on YouTube right now, then please also subscribe and click the bell, because then that way you will know when the new videos come out and the new shows will be available. And you don't want to miss that. And besides, YouTube is the only place where we monitor the chat room. So you can ask questions and we may be able to answer them for you. So when you ask the questions, do it all in capital letters, and that way we will see that there is a question. Makes sense? And you can participate in the show, actually. And Nori and I have created a spiritual think tank where we do amazing things. It seems like we are creating out of seemingly nothing from the quantum existence sometimes. And there is some really interesting things happening. You should come and check it out and see if maybe you want to participate in something like that. You can send us an email to themastermindconnection@gmail.com, and I'll send you some information and a link to come and join us on Sunday at 2 o'clock East Coast time and East Coast USA. And then you can participate. Now, let me introduce the guest. This is going to be very special, and it's going to be quite an education for most of us, because he's going to talk about a lot of the things that we have heard rumors about. But here's a man that he has eyeballed the facts. And his name is Eric Hecker. And well, he you have a website also still, don't you, Eric? That
Yes, I do, Augie. It's deciphering.tv.
Yeah, deciphering.tv. That's right. Go there and have a look. There's some interesting stuff. And he's also covering a lot of the things that he talked about on the Disclosure Project's testimony here about a month and a half ago. And there is some technologies that is being withheld from us. Some very, I would call it almost dangerous technologies now that is coming out through the protection that he is, under the Whistleblowers Act. So that's why he can talk about it. We did a show before here, probably about a year and a half ago or something like that, where he did not mention about some of the real sensitive stuff, because at that time he couldn't. but now he can, because now it is really opening up everywhere, because he spent a year in Antarctica and he saw some of the technologies that they have and they are using for their purposes, not necessarily for ours. There are some really dark stuff happening there. That's my opinion only. And what we're finding now that we can discuss these things, because the doors of the stable is open and the horses are coming out. So welcome to the show here, Eric, and let's talk about Antarctica. It is just an enigma that very few people go there, very few people know much about what's down there. And from what I hear, it's a beautiful place. And how in the world do we want to start out a show like this? Talk about Antarctica in general.
I guess.
Do you like the place?
Oh, it was beautiful. First and foremost, thank you very much for having me, Augie. Thank you to everybody out there listening. I think it's fantastic that we're actually hitting a more of a multinational crowd. That's fantastic. But on the topic of Antarctica and its beauty, I would have to say that the winter that I spent at South Pole afforded me some of the most beautiful things that my eyes will ever bear witness to.
Mm-hmm.
But I could just simply look up and see on a clear day, so to say, in a clear situation during the darkness of the South Pole winter was beauty beyond words. It was just amazing to look up at the sky.
Does it really get totally pitch black though? Isn't there a little bit of
Absolutely.
it does?
Yes. It's 0% humidity. The facility is at 9,300 feet of elevation. So it's high, it's dry, it's cold. The air is crisp as air can get. And it is the purest of atmosphere that blocks nothing coming in from the cosmos. When you're at that elevation, you simply just have to take your gaze and raise it up a couple of degrees, and then the whole entire planet drops out of your perspective. Your whole view is just simply the stars of the sky. And in that area, it is just, you see everything. You see with your eyes what telescopes see other places.
Wow. And then the summer. I have to disappoint a whole bunch of people out there. The flat earthers.
Yeah.
There is 24/7. The sun goes a little bit higher, go down to the horizon and goes back up again. You have 24-hour sunlight. Talk about that a little bit. How is it? How can you sleep at night?
Oh my goodness, it's very challenging. It's very bright. The summer season at the South Pole, being outside is not a thing of beauty. It's a thing of pain. The brightness of the sun, the reflection of it on the white surface, what that does to your perspective. It's very, very bright and very brutal on the eyes. And yes, it is 24 hours of day of sun up until it peaks out down there. The summer season in that hemisphere is different. So the December 21st is the, summer solstice, and when the sun would be at its highest. And like you said, at that point, it's pretty much rotating overhead. And then as you pass the solstice, it just progresses outward to the horizon line and eventually dropping down below the equator and out of sight for the other half of the year.
I know what that looks like, because I'm from Norway originally, and the northern part of the country, we have the same thing. the
Mhm.
sun never gets below the horizon.
Mhm.
And people in the winter, when they don't see the sun,
Mhm.
people up in the northern part of Norway, they turn squirrely.
Mhm.
You need the sun to be healthy, and especially mentally healthy, I think.
And I've actually gone and I've worked up in Barrow, Alaska. So I've seen it on the northern hemisphere as well, the sun functioning the same way with the total darkness and the total light that happens in Barrow, Alaska. So flat
Mhm.
earthers do not like me because I told them, I said, don't come at me sideways. I said, the earth is round. I went and checked.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, did you hear that, flat earthers?
Yeah. I've been to the South Pole and I've been damn near to the North Pole and I've witnessed how the sun functions, and it functions the way
Yeah.
it would if we were a globe. And the flat earthers are either feds or idiots, and people can take their pick.
Yeah, I think though that their arguments, for people that do not understand the science very deeply, their argument sounds very, very real. So it's easy to get the wrong impression of it. And the CIA, they have admitted it's one of their psyops programs, but let's leave that one alone. We want to hear about the technologies that you have experienced and seen, and maybe even worked on or repaired. So you spent a whole year down there, and you saw some amazing things that part of it came out in your testimony here about a month and a half ago in Washington
Mhm.
at the Disclosure Project. What were you able to experience and see down there?
I guess that does bring up something that we did not discuss last time, which did come out recently. Was there was a laser beam that I observed that at the time I didn't think much of it, and was, like lots of other projects, you follow the conversation of what they present something as. But then, upon having conversations with other people and learning that this science, when connected with this science, you just start to find out that there's more possibilities to things. So one of the things that I was bringing up is the possibility of these um, new technologies known as chemical lasers that could be used as, weapon systems, long-range communication systems. Regardless, it's new technology that we should consider might be what's occurring. And this this happened. June 12th was the event that Dr. Greer put together in Washington, D.C.
Mm.
And shortly thereafter, my birthday shows up on the calendar. And on the day of my birthday, the National Science Foundation has a website, and they can post anything they wanted on their website. And lo and behold, on my birthday, they posted a picture of the Arrow facility at the South Pole Station firing off its green laser that I had just disclosed, recently at the Greer event. And I was like, looks like I still got somebody in the program that, give me a little birthday present.
Wow, how much more confirmation can you get than that?
Yeah. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And, this is
Wow.
things and technologies that the people need to consider exist. And then once we realize they do exist, then we can start asking, well, what do we think the people that possess them are doing with them?
Yeah, what are they using this laser for?
Yeah, these are the questions we need to ask the responsible parties, but it seems to be a revolving door at facilities like this. So similar to how the Gacona, Alaska HARP facility keeps changing hands and programs and financiers, they say follow the money. It's interesting that most of these facilities make it very hard to track the money because they keep switching operators every time somebody starts to look in that direction.
Oh yeah, that's their way of hiding it.
It sure seems to be handy.
Yeah. Now I read a statement, and I'm trying to think where I saw it. It was in a was in news in the news media, probably yeah, I was a newspaper. It said the facility, the HARP facility in Alaska, was closed down. And we talked before the show and just said no.
Yeah, no, it never shuts down. There's like facilities on Long Island, they would say that about as well. And it just doesn't happen. It really, it's almost like a way that these factions let people know, like, hey, there's room in this project for other investors. It's like it's just
Yeah.
letting it's like a way of letting other people know there's you know the lease is up and we're open to bidding, and somebody always picks it up. These facilities never shut down. They certainly change hands regularly, but it's usually following one of these episodes of, oh, we're shutting it down, and the people that don't really care for it. So and then when everybody thinks that it's shut down, all of a sudden 4 to 6 months later, they find out, oh no, actually somebody did get the contract and it is still up and running.
Yeah.
Turns out there's never a pause.
Well, the technology of the HARP is probably one that is not necessarily for civilian use, that they're using it for maybe global control because they are aiming it out to the troposphere and so they create a bubble. Have you studied that technology some, haven't you?
I have, absolutely. And
Yeah.
it's multifaceted. There's conversations that can discuss how that bubble that you just mentioned can in and of itself be utilized to create a blast of air to cause tsunami-like winds, to cause earthquakes, theoretically, to be used as over-the-horizon communications, as a refractor. There's all kinds of things that can be done in the directed energy weapons realm. And this is what people need to start becoming concerned with, because when the weapon is multifaceted, it's like having a gun where you can change the caliber of the weapon like instantaneously and then fire it differently. So every time you fire, it seems like a different weapon, but it's hard to track the assailant when they can lose your trail that rapidly. And it's just the new technologies that they have. It makes their arsenal that much more harder to ascertain. They can keep switching stuff. We don't know anything in their whole bag of tricks. And it's like every time they want to come at us, they can just open up their bag of tools, pull out a different thing that we have no idea what it is, and bash us with it. And we're not familiar with the action or the wound, so we don't even know we're being attacked or injured.
Yeah.
But they have a whole bag full of these tricks.
And if they want to control the weather with a system either like HARP or maybe some of the stuff that you saw in Antarctica, there is an obvious way that can be done. As a pilot, I was trained fairly well in meteorology, and let's say you have a warm front coming along, and you can direct the energy from HARP from two different locations in front of it and stop it. So that then the warm front usually brings rain. So now you can have rain all the time behind when they stopped it. And they can do the other way around. They could accelerate something so that you have no rain, like they're doing right now, in my opinion, in the southwest of the United States. We can see the fronts out in the Pacific. They come up from the south and then they stop. And that looks suspicious to me, knowing that weather systems always move. Why do they stop? Does that make any sense?
It does when you consider that there's an outside force being applied somehow. Then I just agree with you. It makes sense to me. It seems that there's a manipulation going on.
Mhm.
Yeah, I would add to this conversation that people can check on, September 11th when the towers came down. A lot of folks don't know that there was a massive hurricane coming in from the Atlantic, bearing down straight onto Manhattan.
Mm.
It was zeroing in, it was moving in that direction without pause. And then all of a sudden, it stopped offshore and hung out until the whole 9/11 debacle occurred, leaving it as a crystal clear sky for the event. That sky that we saw on 9/11 for that staged event had the sky set for clear because they hung a hurricane off the coast for a while. And then when the event stopped, they actually directed it. It went the other direction. It like
But that
turned tail and ran.
that doesn't happen.
No.
They can't. No systems. They move along.
Mhm.
They don't stop and reverse.
There was
And
documentation that used to be very secreted, but now has since been declassified.
yeah,
And it was a
yeah,
report that the Air Force had produced. I think it was in the late 80s or early 90s, where they were discussing that in, I think it was 2023 or 2025, that they would have total control over the weather. And they weren't discussing it as in how they were going to, this is a report on how they were going to do it.
yeah. When it comes to HARP, do you see any connection from HARP, let's say Long Island, Alaska, or they have also a HARP system in Norway, by the way, on the West Coast?
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen it, but I know the people over there talking about it. Do you see any connection from that to what you observed in Antarctica with the could this be a part of Operation Deep Freeze, or do you see any connection there?
I see connections internationally when I see that these weapon systems are being hidden in plain sight as science facilities. And then when I see that we have many nations that conspire, let's just say, through these science programs, and they say, oh, we're just going to work these programs, even, during times of war or not. These will be the departments that prove that we get along great still because we're science. Well, it's like, well, it turns out when these facilities are being operated, with subterfuge, and it turns out, well, they too have weapon systems involved, and maybe this isn't as simple as it looks on the surface. That we need to look into what are these networks that operate across borders on the back end
Yeah.
of wartime nations. What is going on there? I mean, during World War II, we had members of the Bush family convicted for war crimes for trading fuel for rubber and profiteering off of both sides of the war.
Yeah, nobody knows about that.
Yeah, so this type of stuff happens. I mean, there are robber barons, there are profiteers, there are folks that are more than happy to take crowd A over here and crowd B over here, have them start chopping each other's heads off and just fleecing the money out of both sides for selling them the hatchets.
Yeah, yeah, that's when it when it comes to HARP, we know we can see in the sky when they're operating too, because have you seen that when you have let's say a light cloud layer, you can see ripples in the
Mhm.
sky. Have you looked into that?
Absolutely. I believe that there are things that we can look for um, at both ends of, like, let's say, a directed energy weapons transfer, an attack, whatever you want to call it. I believe that there's a high probability of seeing something on both the delivery side and the receiving side.
Yeah.
That there, and I don't want to try to pretend that it's anything specific. I think it could show up in a variety of ways because, you know, Mother Nature's very diverse, and you're kind of sending this energy wave through a different spectrum of reality, but it's a reality that we're still a part of. So there should be something observable, but it's going to vary a lot depending on what's going on when it's discharged, what's going on when it's received. You know, there's so many variables, but I would think you would have some sort of observable phenomena.
Let's visit that laser that you saw in Antarctica again. What do you think its purpose is?
Like all these other systems, I would say uh, it's a multifaceted system that is meant to present to the public first in a friendly capacity that could be justified under the auspices of science, and then work with a network of international folks. Second to that, there would be the possibility of it being some sort of communication system. It could be some sort of a weapon system. This is, a matter of connecting the dots to what's possible. It's like Occam's razor in reality gets utilized inappropriately on on the regular. So Occam's razor really means we have to take all possibilities and place them on the table. And then we can slice off a piece with the razor thin and assess. And if we can conclude that something absolutely isn't possible, then we can throw that out and keep assessing what's left on the table. But until you can negate it, you have to leave it on there as a possibility.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of obvious to me that it could be a weapon system.
Mm-hmm.
Those lasers now are coming out, becoming common knowledge that they have a big laser in the nose of a Boeing 747, and they're using them against aircraft and other things. And maybe in Antarctica is where maybe they developed some of these because it's so inaccessible that they had privacy doing anything they wanted to do.
Totally appreciate that. Yes, it makes sense. And I agree that it has a lot to do with just the privacy that Mother Nature affords doing work in such a remote area. I think a lot of it is a consideration too that, this stuff is cutting edge technology. We're talking laser beams at the end of the planet. And, how many people know what chemical lasers are? Because there's a high probability of things being more in that capacity. Additionally, the idea of superfluids is new to me. I'm trying to get educated. So there's other stuff that I've seen down there that I'm very suspect of what was really going on. But I have to do research and learn what's really going on with some of these technologies when, I was presented one thing, but now I'm learning that there's these secondary and tertiary considerations that I certainly wasn't being told, but now I have to look and almost, educate myself on these things. And superfluids is a topic that I'm trying to engage my mind on, because apparently once you chill something down cold enough, apparently it's in this whole new field of physics.
Yep.
So it's, apparently I was in an environment where superfluids were being utilized, but now I have to kind of, look backwards, decipher my experience, and figure out what were they doing around me with the superfluids, because this is profoundly new science, and apparently they're not being forthwith. And that seems to be par for the course at the facility, is that there was a lot of things being presented as, oh, this is what we're doing. But then in reality, there was a lot of, oh, but this is what we're really doing.
Well, the systems that you observed down there, did they tell you anything, or were you able to ask questions about what it was for and what it did, or anything like that?
In a way, yes, and in a way, no. But I'll clarify. So, on one particular instance, I had to look into changing a fuel pump, if I remember correctly. And that required me to shut down the electrical circuits to be able to de-energize the pump, to pull it out of service, put a new one in, rewire it, and energize the circuit. But in the process of tracing out this repair, the sub panel that I had to go to and, confirm de-energizing my equipment, the breakers had one in the wrong position. According to what I was told, that particular breaker should have been de-energized, but I was looking at it being energized. So now I was concerned, is this a mislabeled breaker? Is, something on that's supposed to be off? Either way, I was running it up my chain of command to make sure that my crew was working safely. Long story short, I was informed that the breaker is supposed to be in the on position. It is for the ELF system, which I had previously been told was off. And that to me was a big red flag that, something was rotten in the state of Denmark, so to say.
Yeah.
So I was, I just made a mental note right there in my head, okay, check. ELF system is operational.
Extra low frequency.
Yep. And at that point, it was, they were very clear that was the extent of my line of questioning. Like, all right, you've been told that the circuit that you are working on has been properly identified and you can continue with your work, and what you found, you were told, is not a problem for you. So hurry up and get back to your work. That was the end of that conversation. But what they couldn't do was take back what I already figured out. ELF is up and running. Check.
This opens up for another question that you may have thought of. And I am quite sure they didn't tell you anything, because this one is deeply covered, and that is ELF is used for two things that I know of. One of them is deep space communication and underwater communication. What do you think of? Could it be something like that?
Absolutely. I believe that. Yep, absolutely. I think it's doing at least those two items. And again, we, the people, need to comprehend that there's even more. I feel like it's like one of those infomercials, like, but wait, there's more.
Yeah.
Like this is what directed energy weapons are all about. Is they're very efficient, and they can be kind of like networked as well to do different things.
Did they have any facilities that was absolutely top secret, you couldn't get in to save your life down there, that were absolutely kept from you?
No, again, it's a false pretense that people have, that they believe that when something's really top secret, that there's just more markings, more danger flags, more red lights, more barbed wire. No, it's the opposite. The more secret something is, the less labeled it is, the more benign it looks, the more the public can walk right in the front door with you.
Wow. Well, I wouldn't want to try that at Area 51, though. But
understood. But there's
yeah.
there's other places that you've walked into in your neighborhood that are top secret facilities, and you didn't even know it, because it's that in your face. But the people that know.
And it is probably labeled in such a way that it looks perfectly all right.
It probably says like the law offices of Berkeley and more.
Yeah.
It probably says something very vague. It probably just, is a place where you would never question. Of course, people walk in and out of there. It would just be, right under everybody's noses. This is where compartmentalization is the most powerful tool for secrecy. A need-to-know basis, an overseer of all who knows what's going on, that just coordinates that, no cog in the machine will get so big before it gets divided into smaller cogs. And then all of these cogs, these compartments, have no clue what's going on in the big picture typically. And it's a very effective means to squish an understanding of a bigger picture.
Yeah. So what you're saying actually is that the facility where you were, it wasn't classified. It was
Correct.
just they restrict the information going in and out by the people that they trust to come and work there.
Yeah. They do this to us in our regular waking lives as well. This is what they do in offices. They're already doing this. We were just getting it in a very micro observable environment.
Mhm.
It became very in your face.
Yeah. So then there is many uses for these things of nefarious reasons, I
Mhm.
suppose. But
Absolutely. I mean, for starters, we have the capacity for them to generate earthquakes, to manipulate the weather. I mean, these are very powerful weapons, powerful, multifaceted weapons. Um, there's a lot to be said for being able to just simply deliver energy. When we consider that delivery of energy at one location, if it's a fault line, well, then it can generate an earthquake. If we deliver that energy to somewhere else where it's on the verge of being a storm, if that storm wouldn't have occurred naturally, but if we can apply some energy that's the straw that breaks the camel's back, that snaps a storm into play, well, if that storm then does the intended damage, I mean, then that right there is a weapon as well.
mhm. Here's I have a question that maybe the UFO enthusiasts would like to hear the answer to.
Mm.
There is, let me back up just a second. In 1989, I think it was, there was the Kalahari Desert crash. And that is when there was a UFO entered the atmosphere over the South Pole region, went straight north towards South Africa, and they caught it on radar. When it left the Antarctic continent, they saw it on radar, and they followed it, tried to contact, didn't work, so they sent two jets up, and they shot it down, and it crashed in the Kalahari Desert. And there was one comment in the report on that came out of the South African Air Force. It said that an entry point for many of the unexplained phenomena is over the Antarctic region. So it seems like it could be a corridor or some safe place for them to come in, and then they skim along the surface to where they're going. Have you heard or did you see anything of the UFO phenomena in Antarctica?
I did see UFO phenomena, but what you're saying right now is actually blowing my mind because I've never heard this story that you just mentioned,
Oh,
but I have absolutely in plenty of other conversations as public as this type of a conversation. I mean, I've discussed this before many times, is that I have suggested that the south pole of this planet is a point that's easier for vehicles to enter or exit our electromagnetic dynamo field that surrounds this planet. Whatever you
yeah.
want to call it, the magnetism of the planet, the flux of the planet. I believe that entering and exiting from the southern pole is advantageous for whatever reason we've yet to define, but we just do it. Second to that, I've suggested that because of that truth is a large part why the South Pole Station exists and is like a air traffic control tower for UFO activity on the planet, which is, also being thrown at the feet of the ice cube neutrino detector for
Yeah.
being able to observe neutrinos, which apparently are jettisoned off of these, craft that are powered by, more exotic powertrains.
Yeah. Well, then there's another theory. And by the way, for the people out there hearing this, go ahead and Google or use another platform. The Kalahari Desert Crash. And you're going to have an eyeful because it explains right there after they shot it down. By the way, it says in the report, a Thor 2 single-phase laser cannon, which is considered by science, oh, that's somebody made that up. No, they didn't. It's in the South African Air Force report. So we got that when I was back in Omaha. It's a second-hand report. It came from the Valhalla Air Force Base in South Africa. There was a Jesuit priest in Switzerland that we know that got it to us. So we had it pretty close to the source. The Kalahari Desert Crash. And you will find out what the aliens look like in the craft, and a lot of interesting reading there. So, but what if there's an opening from the inside or a cavern inside the earth, and some of these ships might be coming from there?
I think anything's possible. You know, we know very little about what's going on in the depths of the oceans,
Yeah.
which cover a large portion of this planet. And, you know, if we start to try to break the crust and go even further inner Earth, it certainly opens up a huge conversation. And, you know, again, all possibility exists always. And, you know, until we get in there and say there's nothing in there, then it's like Schrodinger's cat, but of inner Earth, you know?
Yeah.
There's either people in there or there isn't. We don't know until we open the box.
Well, according to the documents coming out of Germany or the Nazis over there, they say, yeah, we found an opening. So, and then Admiral Byrd talks about something like that. And there's astral travelers that says, yes, we've been there and we've come back, and I'm one of them. So I know this could be a source of flying discs coming all over the planet, or one source of that. I know we have the radar images from them coming from space too, so we know they're here.
Yeah, I think at the very least there's going to be activity transitioning from, you know, on surface, at least, you know, surface activities of this planet versus off planet activities. I believe something's going on at the southern pole of this planet, that there's it's 90 degrees is the angle of transformation. We can see this in all of nature around us. So it's at that pole that things basically want to come in and then basically transition 90 degrees to match the surface of the planet. And something's happening there. That's like where the approved spot is to make this 90-degree angle of transformation. It means something, but we don't know yet.
Yeah. What can we do in order to help speed up the process of transparency in government in regard to the extraterrestrial presence? And I'm still calling them UFOs. I'm not going to change that.
Fair enough. Great question. And your answer actually is perfect, because they're trying to change the words on stuff, right? Like you just said, you know, it used to be UFO. Now they're trying to do UAP because they're trying to control the narrative. And that's the problem. So when you say, you know, what can people do? And my answer is to become more discerning and challenging. What I'm learning, being an actual whistleblower, going through the front lines of the problem of trying to disseminate this information, what I'm learning is that there's a sea of liars and con men and profiteers, charlatans, and snake oil salesmen in the disclosure industry. That the vast majority of what we, the people, are observing in what we're being told is the non-mass media, which we're being suggested is not overrun with corporate interests like the regular mass media. And we're supposed to believe that those corporate interests that could afford billions of dollars on the other side, that no longer have to spend billions of dollars on the other side because nobody's watching. Everybody thinks that they're not invested in this side of it. They're getting everybody for a lot cheaper now. All the world is a stage, like Shakespeare said.
Yeah.
And the game is still being played, but most of the people haven't realized that the people that are really good at the game just switch players in the middle of the game.
Yeah.
They have the power to do that. We don't.
Well, when they I don't think they control the whole narrative anymore, but they control a big part of it, because I think they can work our part of the narrative from the backside through people that is all for opening up the UFO issue, let the information out. Yeah, right. There's
Exactly.
no way the government is going to give their last secrets out. It will not happen.
And yet, in the disclosure circles, the non-mainstream media, the truth movement, we have all of these people with bated breath watching folks like Grush and the government testimonial to what's going on.
Yeah.
They're still looking there for the answer. They're still touting this stuff as the truth of the conversation when it's anything but.
Yeah. Yeah, we listen, we got to look behind the front of what we hear.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times too, it's the people. Look at the people. Not necessarily, there's an old saying, don't care about what they say, look at what they do, where they invest their money, and what they have done in the past to promote certain things. That there is clues back there about who the character of the person is. And
yeah, I mean, a lot of these folks in the circles are former FBI agents or former CIA agents,
yeah,
former NSA agents, former counterintelligence operations. This is what they all did for the government, and they're all like, "Oh, I don't do that anymore. I'm retired." Oh, okay. So now the correct terminology for the business relationship that you're in with the government is called a consultant. But they don't tell the world that they just literally retired out of the job that they had for the government doing the exact same thing, but now they get the retirement check. Now they can operate as an independent contractor for the same exact position. They could be a consultant and they can still be getting paid to be running a counterintelligence operation,
yeah.
which seems to be rampant in the disclosure community.
There is no such thing as a retired CIA agent.
Right, but yet all these conversations, the general public doesn't know that most of these people used to wear the hat of one of the factions that they're now criticizing all of the other. It's business as usual.
Yeah.
These guys are just still throwing money at each other. Now they're just fighting with the retired guy from their Espiritu Corps.
Yeah. Oh man, it's getting deep, and but the horses are out of the barn. Where are they going, do you think? What is the government's? There's always a plan. So where is the government's plan leading us in the disclosure of all of this? Or have they a plan at all? Well,
Yes,
it's just
the government's plan is leading the people away from the truth in as so far as they want the public to believe that they're just looking into the existence of this technology, that they're just starting to gather intelligence on it. What they don't want them to know is that they've been doing this for a long time, that they've already reverse engineered the technology, that they're already maximizing the benefit of the possession of these technologies, unbeknownst to the general population. So they don't want to admit the usage. So they're lying when they put up these puppets that say things like, oh, I'm with the government and I saw a UFO thingy, and boy, it did crazy stuff that nothing we have can do anything like that. Nothing our enemies have can do anything like that. That's the smokescreen. That's the lie. Is they're trying to convince the world that nobody possesses these technologies.
Yeah, so it has to be alien.
Yes, they don't. They're basically they're refusing to admit that we already possess these technologies, which is slowing down the access to the general population having access to them right off the bat. It's just another denial. It's another slap in the face of the haves versus the have-nots. We have this technology, you do not.
Yeah. And then we have NASA getting in the middle of it. We might as well stay on this one because I just read an article that was about NASA now have discovered, I think they said 57 huge objects entering the solar system. And
Oh, okay.
next thing they're going to say is, oh, these are alien ships. We better be scared.
Or they could bring one in to force an impact. They can use a directed energy weapons system to create the environment that looks like a meteor impact, call it a meteor impact, blame it as a natural occurring event, when in reality, again, this is what directed energy weapons can do. There's already people talking about situations like this and plans for institutions to do things like this.
Yeah.
9/11 was an inside job. You think, meteorite 2025 can't be manufactured?
Yeah, it's getting deep when you get into those things. I'm already starting to worry about YouTube. So, but I think people are waking up in hordes. It will get to a point when people are stand up and say, look here, government agencies, or they're going to go at people within the government agencies says, we've had enough of the lies. We want to see the papers.
Oh, they need to get way above government agencies. Government agencies are low-level wardens for the general masses of the population. The threat to humanity is coming from way above the government agencies. They're pawns, less than pawns, in what's really going on this planet.
Yeah,
but the people need to wake up to that level of understanding, because we certainly cannot keep our intellect and conversations and dialogues around the incapacities of Democrats and Republicans. There's more going on. That's a con job in and of itself.
Yeah, and I think too that people will get to a point. I don't think we're there yet, but they will get to a point somewhat similar to what I discovered when I visited Russia back in I think 1971. There was a saying back there that they said, nothing has been confirmed until the government has denied it. And
that's good. That's good.
Yeah. Now we flip that one. That's here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Back then, probably not that way, but now we have what they had in Russia.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Augie.
That's just pathetic.
Yeah. So basically, there was the weekend that Dr. Greer had his event in June, this past summer.
Mm-hmm.
And it was immediately on the heels of that all of a sudden they rolled out this Grush propaganda scheme. which
Yeah.
was to basically go against what we just said. We were trying to present to the world that the governments of the world, other factions of the world, have this technology.
Yeah. Yeah, they're denying that because that does not serve their agenda.
Correct. But yeah, they want to withhold this technology from the masses because people fail to realize that as long as we don't know that this stuff exists, it's not regulated. They can do whatever they want with it.
And have you looked into who's paying for it? All these programs in Antarctica, and is it private money behind it, or is it government deep
Well,
project?
here's a really interesting thing that came out recently. Everybody needs to pay attention to a guy who goes by the name of Dark Journalist, and he just unloaded some stuff about, excuse me, connections to JFK and the Antarctic Project. So one of the things that people don't realize is that the missions that Admiral Byrd went down, the expeditions that Admiral Byrd went down, were funded by a relative of his. And that relative, coincidentally, owned the books depository building that Kennedy was shot from.
Ah.
Which is just more than a coincidence. Additionally, the Byrd expeditions were helped in a big part by a gentleman that is very well hidden in history, and his name is Lloyd Berkner. And he went down for Byrd's expeditions as part of the crew. He was a radio man of great ability. When he came back from Byrd's expeditions, and just right after World War II, this guy Lloyd Berkner initiated what we now refer to as IGY, International Geophysical Year. And, you know, this is what now a lot of these nation states operate their science under, the collective of IGY. And Lloyd Berkner started this IGY situation at the time for the express purpose of starting to pay attention to what was coming and going from the planet. That was a conversation that was a bit ahead of its time, but he was starting it as a former member of the expedition to Antarctica. This is where his thoughts were at, and he was getting funding. And they just rapidly changed what they were discussing it to before.
Yeah. Yeah, and when it comes to what's going on in Antarctica, I have seen a video from was taken by one of the people on Admiral Byrd's crew of one of the ships, where they were flying discs flying around the ships and shooting at them. There's a short video. I saw it actually on YouTube, and I've been searching for it since, and I don't see it anymore. But there is a video out there. It's not very clear, but you can see the flying discs zipping by the ships, and you can see lightning coming from them. So there is laser or particle beam weapons that is coming from the flying disc hitting the ships. Because, you know, he had a couple of ships that sank.
Yeah, so yeah, a lot of folks don't realize everything that went on down there, and Berkner certainly would be somebody who would have been privy to the comings and goings of Antarctica and the conversations around it. And here's more insult to injury and more connections. This was fantastic work by Dark Journalist for figuring this out. But Berkner has been somebody on my radar that I've been trying to express to the world was like the missing link of, you know, whatever people want to call a secret space program, the breakaway civilization, something to do with what's going on and off this planet for sure. But with that being said, back to the Byrd family owning the books depository that the supposed round was fired from into Kennedy. Now, whether that happened or not remains to be debated, the whole bullet,
Yeah.
magic bullet stuff, right? But what can't be denied is that it was a Byrd family member that owned that building. And what can't be denied is that JFK was going to meet someone that day that he got shot. They were going to be speaking to the world publicly. He had a speech prepared, a speech that's never been released. Every other presidential speech gets released to the public. This one was not. And on that day, John F. Kennedy was going to a podium with a microphone to speak with none other than Lloyd Berkner to discuss what's really going on in the world that people were not privy to.
So that was supposed to happen that day.
That day, he was supposed to go meet Lloyd Berkner and give information that was going to change the way all the nations of the world functioned and looked at life. That was the
Wow.
precursor type statements, but that speech has never been released. They never got their day in the light, so to say. And then Berkner went over to a very important seat over at Brookhaven National Labs on Long Island, which is basically part of the Operation Paperclip military industrial complex situation.
Mhm.
You know, Brookhaven National Labs is more or less the scientific arm of the CIA.
Yeah.
And Berkner had a job there. His seat, basically, he operated in an office that was in charge of figuring out how to disseminate the information being discovered at Brookhaven National Labs out into academia.
Well, you get deep when you get into this, and gosh, I see we are out of time, but I suggest highly for people research on your own. Get out there on the internet and try to stay away from Google. They do censor a lot of stuff. There are other platforms that is better at research. So do your own research and find your own truth. And that's what you're good at, Eric. You've been a digger for a long time.
I'm getting better and better every day because there are
Yeah.
dots to connect for sure.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for being with us.